This is HBR News number 366. Twitter bans calling out groomers. Antifa summer camp. Ghazi Uhuru's his last Akwave, where we reflect on the stories of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello everyone and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian and I hope you guys are doing well this week. We're going to be talking about some news stories and I'm here with two of my co-hosts, Hannah Wallen and Mike J. Dr. Random Cam is out at the moment and is not going to be available this week, but we'll welcome him back next week when we get back to our regularly sort of staffed program. We have a great show lineup for you guys today regardless though, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section. On this week's HBR News Show, we're going to be talking about Twitter following in Reddit's example. A Portland organization called Budding Roses has started a summer camp to turn your fourth grader into a communist. A lesbian bar is shut down for not being woke enough, despite it being its ultimate goal was to be like a lesbian exclusive bar, and more. So stick around, it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron only show. So on this week's patron only show, I haven't read this yet, it's just a news story, it could be really funny. I mean, it seems ridiculous to me. So there is a Medford-based company called Wicked Saints Studios, and they're preparing to launch the world's first adventure activism game. It's a video game. It's getting ready to go into beta. It's from Oregon, so take of that what you will. And we're gonna read a bit about it because a game where I can play as an activist and go and make real change in the world, that sounds like so much fun. I mean, wow, that is very exciting stuff that I really want to do in a video game. So we're gonna read about that. Am I breaking up for you, Mike? I could try leaving and coming back in. Am I doing it for you, Hannah?
No, actually.
Well, hold on a second. I'll just quickly leave and come back in. All right, I'm back. Is that better?
I think I found the culprit. Never mind, move on.
Oh, okay. So, anyway, we're going to be talking about this story in the patron show. I'm sure it's gonna go platinum or whatever they call it. It's gonna win all the game awards. And I think that you gotta be have your finger on the pulse of what the kids want, and this is definitely for sure one of those things. So we're going to read a bit more about it in the patron show. So if you want to join us in the patron show, you have to become a patron or become a badger by going to feedthebadger.com and starting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into the Discord where you'll be able to watch all the additional content, talk with the community. There's movie nights, there's game nights, there's always something going on, people hanging out and so on. So it is a cool place where there's like maybe the majority of our content might even live there in a way because Allison's always starting conversations and there's always people discussing stuff. So please consider joining the community at feedthebadger.com. All right. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we've been yeeted from the internet because of our bad, no good, awful views, then go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com. That's where all of our content lives. So all right, with that said, I think that we're going to get into the stories now. So we're going to first talk about Twitter, but not just Twitter, Twitter and Meta. So it was last week that we reported on Reddit's recent banning, with some nuances on the use of the word groomer to quote, target and harass LGBTQ people and advocates, end quote. Today, two more big tech companies, Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, and Twitter have also said in a statement that, quote, baselessly calling LGBTQ people or the community groomers or accusing them of grooming is governed under their policies prohibiting hate speech, end quote. Lauren Alexander, the lead of Twitter's health product communications department, had this to say via an email to, I believe it was some journalists that were asking. Well, we are committed to combating abuse motivated by hatred, prejudice, or intolerance, particularly abuse that seeks to silence the voices of those who have been historically marginalized. For this reason, we prohibit behavior that targets individuals or groups with abuse based on their perceived membership in a protected category, end quote. So it's progressive. Earlier this week, the Daily Dot reported a tweet from James Lindsay calling a transgender woman a groomer to see if it violated Twitter's policies against abusive behavior. So the Daily Dot essentially reported James Lindsay for a post that he made. In case you guys don't know, James Lindsay is one of the grievance studies professors that wrote a bunch of hoax papers where they would do things like write out Mein Kampf and replace Jew with men and made it into like a feminist, thing. And of course it got their works got printed in scientific papers. They got tons of approval and they were clearly trolling them. And so James Lindsay has more recently been very active in the, I guess you could say, the education space, where he's trying to protect children from groomers, and he is discovering how deep the rabbit hole of this social emotional learning that is being used as one of the main driving forces behind children's education in public schools, private schools, charter schools, it doesn't matter. And because of that, he's very concerned about the grooming problem and that queer theory. And I believe her name was Rubin, that wrote about it in the 80s. And he's been going through her work, and Paolo Fieri and these other, Marxists, basically. So, of course, James Lindsay is they hate him. They hate his guts because of this. So the Daily Dot basically reported him because they're trying to get him banned from Twitter. But Twitter said in that tweet did not violate its policies. Quote, after receiving the available information, we want to let you know that this tweet has not broken our safety policies, said in an email. They continue, quote, we know this isn't the answer you're looking for. If this account breaks our policies in the future, we'll notify you, end quote. Via email, Twitter said that it is looking into why the report was denied. It did not respond by press time. So what you have in this little anecdote, which I wanted to pull out before we commented on the overall thing, is that Twitter is obviously siding with LGBTQ activists because they have, in their core philosophy and their core culture at Twitter, just like big tech by extension, a belief that, in the order or the hierarchy of the progressive stack. So if there are LGBTQ people that feel bad, then Twitter has a duty to protect them from hate speech. The Daily Dot, which is it's a far left journalistic outlet, they basically are saying that Twitter isn't doing enough censorship. They're following the rules, in a way that is too favorable to the wrong people for their taste. So you have an argument, but it's over how much authoritarian is necessary, right? So and Daily Dot thinks that they should be way worse than they are, and obviously Twitter thinks that they're operating within the most safe boundaries. But I would imagine that with these changes in policy, and that also includes Facebook and Instagram, because I mentioned that they both have also said they're going to do the same thing, a lot of people, even if they're not using the word groomer in a way that is intended to harass or harm, are going to get banned, because it comes down to how does the person being called a groomer feel about it. And I think that's where the danger is at. So those are my thoughts. Do any of you guys have any thoughts?
Well, to start with, you can't harass somebody with a single statement, because harassment refers to a pattern of behavior, a course of conduct, not one single act in one individual moment in time. And like if you look up harassment laws, they require a pattern of behavior. So one of the first wrongdoings of social media censorship was to refer to individual acts happening one time between two parties as harassment, because that's incorrect. You can consider stuff to be rude or obnoxious or abusive or whatever, but it's bullshit to call it harassment. It's misusing the word, and it's misusing it in a way that exaggerates the impact of a single act well beyond what anybody should reasonably expect from it. It's much different than, say, somebody coming to your house or calling your phone or going to all of your different social media and engaging in a pattern of behavior where you can't get away from them. But that's one beef with this. My bigger beef with it is, and I've said this before, using the term groomer this way is dumb. I've said this before, and I will say it again. We should be referring to this behavior as conversion therapy. And that's what it is. It is conversion therapy. It is exactly the same thing that was done to people who were gay, lesbian, and bisexual historically to try to force them to change their sexuality. The only difference is it's politically correct to try to force straight kids or cis kids to change their sexuality or their gender identity. And if gay people are born that way, straight people are born that way. If being trans is a result of gender dysphoria that is chemical or structural, then being cis is also a result of chemical or structural formations in the body. It's just the way you're made. And so conversion therapy is torture. It is wrong, and it would cause the individual to eventually have psychological problems, and it will eventually cause suicides. And it doesn't matter whether you're changing somebody, changing in quotes, from gay to straight, from trans to cis, or from straight to gay, or cis to trans. You're still doing something evil to them. You're taking away their humanity. You're taking away the person that they are naturally developing into to make them fit your view of the world. That is abuse, right? And I understand why people want to call them groomers, because that is a term that's used to describe preparing children to accept abuse by breaking down their boundaries. And that is part of the process of conversion therapy. But conversion therapy is bigger than grooming. And, it's something that should be called out. And Twitter hasn't banned you saying conversion therapy. They haven't banned you from accusing people of using conversion therapy on children for politically correct reasons. It might take longer for you to say that, and it might not seem as catchy and snazzy as OK Groomer, but it's more true, more factual, more real, and it's going to hit home harder, especially for Gen X, LGBTQ, and older, because we remember, this being a thing. We remember learning about it through the baby boomer generation, and how horrible it was for them. And the LGBTQ community fears conversion therapy, rightly so. And they should be just like being able to tell rape victims you wouldn't rape somebody else after you've been through this, right? You wouldn't want to inflict this on somebody else. Although we do know that victims of child molestation, that can be one of the things that happens. So it's a way to get through to people. This is what you're really doing. This is what you're really supporting. Not to say that I approve of Twitter's censorship, because that's bullshit as well. And it's stupid on their part too, because they just made it more likely for people to sort of call out what's going on and everything They essentially just created a reason for pushback against Twitter, and it's only going to last until, I don't know, they force Elon Musk to buy Twitter after all, or whatever. Somebody else comes along, the political winds change, and it's not popular to be woke anymore, and then all of a sudden they'll be apologizing for this. And in my opinion, unless the ownership and control of the site changes, that apology should not be accepted. And they should be dragged over the coals for this. They should be reminded over and over again, you brought this on yourselves. We expect you to stop with the censorship. And that's it. That's my big spiel on this. And the most important thing you can take from this is, in my opinion, it is much more valuable to point out that what is being done to children in the school system that we are objecting to is conversion therapy. That's vital to get out there, because that is something that everybody will understand as wrong.
I think that one of the reasons why people use the word groomer is it's like it's easy, it's short, and it's it's like, I guess you could say it's like good for spreading the term around. Like if there was a short and catchy way of saying conversion therapy, I think people would use that. But I take what you mean. I think that in the cases where you want to like really make the point about what's wrong with schools and social emotional learning and this kind of let's sexualize the children. This literally what was written about it, in the 80s, in the 70s. If you want to like really get into why that matters, then definitely conversion therapy is like, the way to describe it, amongst other things, because there are people within this. It's not just like teachers that, are trying to sort of like treat the children that they're tasked with instructing how to change their sexuality or make them identify a different way, because it gives those instructors a sense of power over the kids. Like it's almost like an artificial way for them to reproduce, because then they can like, I'm trans and non-binary, and I told my kids about it, and a couple of them said, I think I'm trans and non-binary too, which is ridiculous because they're like 5 and 6 years old. But the teachers get a sense of power, and it feeds into their pride, and it makes them feel important. It's really, I think, in many cases why they do this stuff. And so it's not just that, though. There are legit predators that are also, trying to queer the children so they can get closer to them. And this is another thing that can't be ignored. This is one of the reasons why I think it's a really strange thing that until like exactly that there's so much going on at once here, but it should be seen as a really strange thing that not only are there teachers sexualizing children, as well as media figures that make children's programming or write children's books about sex, about sexuality, about gender, or that there are drag queen story hour, sessions, even though drag queens were a completely separate animal, like, not that long ago, but now it's sort of lumped in with all of that other stuff. And on top of that, you have these massive big tech enterprises that are protecting those people, that are protecting them with this kind of censorship, because it's not that they don't want people that don't deserve to be called a thing to be called a thing, because the way that this is going to play out is it's essentially, it exists so that criticism cannot exist against these people. And what I think really needs to happen is like regular LGBTQ folks that don't want to do this to children and don't want, their lifestyle to be conflated with this. They need to speak up. They need to get involved. They need to help us so that we can clarify that there is a line between, being gay or trans or lesbian and being like this kind of predatory Marxist educator that wants to sexualize children because it's the only way, according to them, that we can actually live in a truly equal society, because then children become just like adults. And this is shit that they've said. So I'm not pulling this out of my ass. Like, it's written in the works under queer theory. So if you're gay and you don't want to be associated with that shit, say something, please. So does anyone else have any thoughts? All right, well, I'm gonna move on to the next story, but I want to know what you guys think about this in the comments. Why would Facebook, Instagram, Meta, Twitter, and Reddit, and that's just for starters, why would they do that if it wasn't to protect dangerous people?
I will say one thing about Facebook, and this is something that I'm sick of too, like the rebranding. Facebook decided to rebrand because people were mad about their political involvement and their censorship. So they rebranded to this Meta thing, and they pretty much put that branding on everything they own, and it tells you, they've got all these different things that they've got their fingers in these pots. They own all these different things. It's still Facebook. It's not different. It's not something new. It's not something better or improved. It's just, if we call ourselves something different, you'll forget that we're assholes, right? You'll forget that we're pieces of shit. Forget everything we did to you. It'd be like if you're that one manager at your workplace that is outright abusive decided to come in under a married name, and all of a sudden, you're supposed to forget everything that happened before she got married. Or your school bully decided, I'm going to I'm gonna change my name legally, and now you have to forget every time I beat you up, because now my name's not Fred, it's Joe, or whatever. Yeah. And that's Facebook. That's all Facebook has done. They are still every bit the evil, censorious, politically interfering conglomerate that they always were, and you should not trust anything they're doing.
All right, so like I said, let us know what you guys think about in the comments that story regarding Twitter and Meta, and I look forward to seeing that. So I got a super chat from Meredith G. She gives us $5 and says, "Honey for the Badgers." Thank you, Meredith. Let me just go and peek over at Rumble for any rants. No, nothing right now. And I did get a super chow, I think it was yesterday, so I should probably just go ahead and read that while it's on my mind, just so that this doesn't get too far along before I read it. So Egregious Charles gave us $5 and said, "As long as you suck the blood of straight white men, whatever else you do as a vampire is fine." Thank you. That was I was talking to a guy who was building an alternative platform for buying tabletop gaming products, because the most popular product, or the most popular company, which is called Drive-Thru RPG, they've gone really woke and they've banned some people, and so someone's building an alternative platform, and we talked a bit about vampires. But all right, thank you, Egregious Charles. Let me mark that done.
Just remember, everybody, vampires suck, but they don't sparkle.
Yeah. All right. So now let's talk about Antifa. Budding Roses, an anarchist organization in Portland, is planning a summer camp for kids 4th through 8th grade. So ages like 10 to 13 or something like that, depending on when you started school. In their advertisements, they talk about their free camp and how children who have attended have participated in protests, and encourages them to be, quote, anti-fascist social justice activists, end quote. So speaking of conversion therapy, one class talks about tear gas for Portlanders. Other classes will teach kids how to build their own protest drums and graffiti in the street. In 2018, the city of Portland granted the camp the Spirit of Portland Award. That says a lot about Portland, for nonprofit initiative of the year. And I want to show.
I thought we were done with the Groomers story.
Yeah, right. But like, and I got some of the literature because commies, they love their literature. Let me share the picture or my my browser with you guys so you can see it too. I'm gonna read some of the what it says. So this is a flyer called Tear Gas for Portlanders. Notice it has like the 4 dummies set up, and the Antifa cartoon character says, "You're already paying for this. Why not learn about it?" And so apparently you pay for this camp experience. That's not very communist, but okay.
I thought it was free.
Well, he says you've already paying for this, so I don't know if.
In other words, tax dollars went into it.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's what that means. Which means when they say that, they're only being honest with half the population, because women, for the most part, do not pay taxes. Women think they pay taxes, but as a group, women get back so much in government benefits that it evens out, as opposed to men who pay
into like
about
80...
200% of the taxes that women pay. They pay about 80% of the taxes. Yeah. Most taxes are paid by men.
Yeah. So so this Antifa guys, pass it along. This is not okay. The cops don't have to treat you, or have to use tear gas. Their use of it in the middle of I'm sorry, it's just badly written, so I'm having a hard time reading it. Their use of it in the middle of a respiratory pandemic shows that they do not have the welfare of any Portlander in mind. Remember, 4th grade kids are supposed to read that and know what's being said.
It's okay for everybody to gather together in a large group in the middle of a respiratory pandemic, but how dare the cops use that tear gas? Oh my!
Yeah.
Well, this is their line of logic all the way down. I was watching something
These people are idiots.
The other day, and they were saying like, oh god, what did they say? Something to the tune of, isn't it so funny that the ones always dressed for the riot and expecting the riot are the cops?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, because they know that you're gonna be there and start a riot.
And that whole thing of Antifa showing up dressed in all black with their pants tucked into their socks and into their combat boots,
good guys, Hannah.
And makeshift shields and bandanas over their faces, which they did before there was a pandemic, carrying weapons like trench clubs and stuff like that. That's totally not preparation for a riot, being that they're going to be the rioters and stuff. Nope, not at all.
Mm-hmm. And the guy goes on and says, this is happening because a critical mass of Portlanders took the bad stance or bold stance of proclaiming that Black Lives Matter and we must end police brutality. Portland has a nasty habit of racial injustice, and protesting can't fix that. However, by showing up and speaking out, we can improve POC's future, is what he says. And so and they have a bunch of stuff like this. So I'm gonna go to the website where I got this story from. Children who attend the Antifa summer camp will be taught chants about killer cops and the rapist government, as reported by Daily Citizen. And here's like a chant. The whole damn system is guilty as hell. Indict, convict, put those killer cops in jail. The whole damn system is guilty as hell. It's the state that's our oppressor. It's the rapist government. It's the state that is our oppressor. It's the rapist government. We know the rapist is you. We know the rapist is you. 4th graders.
That's just great.
That's not a really catchy chant. Just like everything the left does. Way too many fucking words.
Yeah, that's a really long meme.
I'm just waiting for the kid to misread it and say, "We know therapist is you. We know therapist is you." But yeah, because it's close enough. But in the way that it looks, anyway. Honestly, there's an easy way to get rid of this. They are teaching kids some things that are illegal. They're teaching kids. It's illegal to teach kids to do illegal things. They're teaching kids to engage in graffiti. They're teaching kids. Who's the other one that they? You said earlier.
I
think it was something to do with property damage or something that I was like,
say.
what the hell? Are they actually telling kids to do this? Because they are telling kids how to break the law. They're telling kids how to do property damage and engage in graffiti is more defacing people's property, but it's still illegal. And if they're teaching kids to riot and they're teaching kids to bait the police and stuff like that, if they're teaching kids to set things on fire, then they're on the wrong side of the law. Parents that don't want that in their community, all they got to do is get a little bit of information on it and then file a complaint. They can file a complaint with their state government. They can get a hold of their state attorney general, and if their state doesn't do anything about it, then they can sound the alarm beyond that. And on the other end of it, if this is the way Portland wants to live, then they need to change their legal system, because pretty much everywhere it's illegal to tag anything. It's illegal to paint something that isn't yours, right? It's illegal to break people's windows. It's illegal to do all that shit. So you very much need to get rid of those laws if you want this stuff to be normal behavior. Just, don't expect to not have any consequences when you export it.
Well, I don't think that the Portland government body is going to do anything about this at all. I think they're a part of it, just like Seattle, just like LA. I think that Portland is demonstrating, though, that it's further along this radical path, because I haven't heard stories like this come out of those other places yet. Not that it doesn't mean that they're not there. It's just that I haven't heard of it yet. So they're turning children into radical activists. That's basically what they're trying to do. And if a mom brings her kids to this, she should, I don't know, she should go to jail or something like that. Like, that is just the worst. You're going to ruin these kids' lives because you want to feel good about yourself. I mean, it's like beyond arrogance. It's beyond pride. But I know that, these single moms that, announce that their children are trans or make them into activists or push them into these spaces, a lot of times they're doing that for their own gratification. And I am pointing the finger right at single moms, by the way. So, what were you going to say? Are they?
I was going to say, are they? They're probably run by single moms. A huge portion of Antifa is made up of single moms, and it's not to say that there's not men involved, because there are plenty of men involved in Antifa. Mm-hmm. But probably this whole thing, if you look at it, the majority of people involved are single moms, and it's probably single moms bringing their kids to that camp.
Yeah, and teachers. That's why I think they're organizing it as a summer camp. It's like a feminine way, right, of organizing,
indoctrinating children.
Yeah, so that you can indoctrinate kids, exactly. And the thing is, too, it's probably not going to be a camp that actually involves camping. It's probably like a building, like a school that they're going to be inside of, and they're just going to do these woke activities. Because, as we all know, no teachers anywhere are teaching their kids about things like queer theory and critical race theory. They're just giving them coloring books called Black Lives Matter and, transgender affirming.
How to fall down the stairs of the courthouse over and over again without dying.
So, yeah, these are... here's another one. Why writing people in prisons and jails matters and how to get involved. So now they want kids to write letters to inmates. Letter writing with incarcerated people.
That's not new. That's actually not new. There was a program like that when we were kids, but certain inmates could be involved in it, and it was kind of a rehabilitative thing. You encouraged them and they encouraged you, and that existed. There was also one for military, but I don't think that's what these guys are doing. I don't think they're encouraging rehabilitation of
Right.
Inmates or courage in soldiers and stuff like that. I'll bet they're not. If they wrote to soldiers, it would be shame on you. You're fighting for the wrong country. Blah 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 blah.
Well, it says here, letter writing with incarcerated people encompasses our commitment to change and the intersection of our priorities. In order to fight for prison abolition, we must connect with and advocate for those most impacted by the prison industrial complex. I like how they have like the hand holding the pencil, and it's clearly like a black person's hand, like a dark skin. I like how they just assume that people in prison are just black. And then like, you know, it's funny because like they're men, but we can't acknowledge that, you know.
Right.
They can't, because that goes against the patriarchy thing. They also have cartoons of you know, Western people landing on Africa and bombing the crap out of it because, you know, they had bombs, I guess, back then, and other narratives basically. And this is the stuff they're going to teach children in this camp. So that sucks, and I'd like to see people, you know, like be on the lookout. Maybe if there's anything like that in your community, you could let us know, because I doubt this is limited to Portland. I just think that they're more like how is it, brazen about it. Like they don't really care what people think because they're so certain that they're doing the right thing that they don't see a problem with people knowing, right? They're proud of it. So yeah, they're basically taking 10 to 13-year-old kids and turning them into, I don't even want to say anarchists, because they're not anarchists. These people are not against government. They just think they should be in charge. So they're basically just communist authoritarians. And that's what they want to turn all the kids into. So, all right. Does anyone else have any final thoughts on Antifa's day camp? Well, put that in mind. Remember the other story we did a while back where we talked about the sexy sex camp or something, where it was all run by these like heavyset women, and they were like talking about masturbation. Not disconnected, guys. Not disconnected. Watch over your kids. And if you can spare an eye, watch over your neighbor's kids, because there's a lot of people who don't know about this crap. The normies don't know, I think. So,
you know, it used to be the norm to watch over your neighbor's kids. I mean, I used to go to the park in my neighborhood knowing that there were at least 6 different moms that would come running if one of us got hurt, that were not necessarily mom to any of us that were there at the moment. They just happened to live bordering the park, and if some kid fell off the monkey bars and started screaming, they'd be the first one to hear it. And you don't see that so much anymore.
Yeah. All right. So let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I think maybe it's just me, but I think that these things that are affecting our children are absolutely crucial, because those kids are going to grow up to become adults, and then we got to deal with that. And if they're like maladjusted, abused, or they have like some heavily distorted version of reality that they're trying to live under, it's going to cause suffering, not just for them, which is obvious, but for people around them. And I think that, you know, the least we could do is be advocates and stewards of children. So don't let these commies get away with this. All right. Let us now move on to the next story. Speaking of commie, well, I don't really know. His allegiances have changed multiple times, so I don't know where he is now. But let's talk about Black Hitler, or Ghazi Kodzo.
It's actually Kodzo. The
Kodzo?
After the D. I thought the same thing, Brian.
Oh yeah.
This was a
Kodzo.
person I honestly only knew about in the periphery as haha funny internet racist man.
Internet guy, yeah.
And it really takes a lot for me to label someone racist. Yeah. This guy earned that label.
Well, give us some Uhurus or Akwaves in the chat, guys. We can't even start talking about Gazi without an Uhuru or an Akwave. All right, go ahead, Mike.
I tried to find the spell of that damn word for like 20 minutes yesterday, and I could not. Because I wanted to put it in the title, and I couldn't find it. So I'm like, screw it, Ghazi Kodzo arrest. So this is going to require some explanation. So it's going to be the headline, and then it's going to be detailing everything about this, because I really didn't know a lot about this guy, and wow, it gets the rabbit hole is deep and very 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 long.
I've watched him the deep lore of his character arc of across many years, because I it's just like, if you're dealing with this kind of like broader political conversation and you're on the internet and you're looking at internet persons, you inevitably are going to run into Gazi. So
yeah. So the anti-white far-left activist YouTuber known online as Ghazi Kodzo has been arrested after a dead body was discovered in a property associated with him. Kodzo, whose real name is... All right, y'all sitting down? Y'all ready for this one?
His real name, yes.
His real name, Augustus Clandius, although some sources say Cornelius Romaine.
Like the lettuce.
Augustus Clandius Romaine.
Why wouldn't you just keep that name? That name sounds cool as shit. It's probably too white.
Just add the word emperor in front of it, and people will be like, "Oh, okay, yeah."
It sounds too white.
It sounds too white. Yeah, it's too white. It's not African enough. It doesn't sound like a Kang.
So, Mr. Romaine started his online career as a lifestyle blogger on YouTube under the name of Smiletone. Kodzo then slowly shifted his content to be more political and more focused on anti-white and anti-Semitic rhetoric. Behind the scenes, Kodzo was preparing to launch his own black nationalist communist organization known as Black Hammer. The group would eventually be founded in Atlanta, Georgia in 2019, and membership would peak, numbering in the hundreds, during the George Floyd riots. In early May of 2021, the group would announce that they had amassed over $100,000 to buy a 200-acre plot of land in San Miguel County, Colorado. The area, which they referred to as Hammer City, was planned to be the group's headquarters where they would live and grow food. But less than 2 weeks later, the group would miss a deadline to sign paperwork for acquiring the land. Despite this, the group continued squatting on the area. After getting into an armed confrontation with a local man, the group would be escorted out of the area by San Miguel County Police. Kodzo and those that stuck with him after the Hammer City debacle retreated back to the Atlanta area, where they rented another property and began aggressively fundraising to make up for the money they were bleeding. I didn't include it in here, but they were like, the way they did this, they were forced is a harsh term, but they were heavily suggesting that their members sell plasma, that they start dipping into retirement accounts, not their own, because a bunch of fucking pimply faced college kids don't have retirement accounts. Obviously, their parents or maybe even grandparents. But yeah, they were.
Wow.
This is where the word cult leader started getting thrown around, and this is where he started doing a lot of really unhinged shit. He started like dressing up in makeup like the Joker. He started referring to himself as Joker.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
With membership dwindling, Kodzo turned to recruiting from the local homeless population and the youth in the area.
Oh my God.
The group also began to aggressively beg for money at the local universities, and I believe they even threatened some of the staff members.
He would demand reparations from white kids.
Yep.
And yeah.
The group, according to former members, took on an almost cultish vibe as things began falling apart in late 2021. Kodzo had begun speaking about experimenting with microdosing various drugs. Black Hammer would eventually come to an end July 19th. when police received a frantic 911 call from an individual claiming to have been kidnapped. When police arrived, they ordered Kodzo and 9 others out of the house. Police then sent in a bomb robot which discovered the body of 18-year-old Amante T. Amons. After examining Amon's body, his cause of death was ruled to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Kodzo was arrested and charged with conspiracy, participation in street gang activity, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, kidnapping, and sodomy.
I think it wasn't just sodomy. I thought it was like aggravated sodomy. So I don't know like how that's different, but because I don't know that sodomy is against the law, but maybe this kind of aggravated sodomy is.
I don't see the word aggravated here. Here's here's the thing.
All right, let's
here's
see. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it just says sodomy there.
Yeah.
I
learned sodomy is still on the books in most places because they wrapped that under bestiality as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what kind of weird shit was going on in that house.
I don't want to know.
So I guess aggravated just means that something to do with the way the crime was committed makes it more serious or more severe than usual for that crime. So if you beat the hell out of somebody and normally they would charge you with assault, but the beating was particularly long, or you followed them into an area where they should have been safe to do it, or whatever. Something where it's like maybe this is the 3rd or 4th time you attack this same person or something like that, then it's aggravated. So if this situation, they might have just called the rape aggravated because there was a kidnapping associated with it. Like you've committed a second crime in order to have access to the person to commit this crime, then they would call it aggravated.
Yeah.
And there's just one more. There's one more line in the write-up. Just let me spit this out real quick. And another one of Godzo's associates was charged as well. So there you go.
So for any of you guys who don't know, and I don't think Hannah's seen him, but this guy was always going viral with these extremely pro-black, anti-white videos where he would approach young white people and say, you're going to give me reparations. And he would constantly demonize white people. And it made him into a character online. One of the things that I think was most kind of mind-blowing for people is that this guy could be so over the top, overtly hateful towards white people. He never suffers any consequences. He never.
And he stepped it up in recent years. Apparently, just hating white people wasn't good enough anymore, so he started in on the Jews. On the Jews.
Yeah, he went
and
after
in one of the articles,
spicy whites.
In one of the articles, they had one of his most popular anti-Semitic takes where he called Anne Frank a Karen.
Yeah.
This guy was something else.
Wow.
He was a real, but again, I gotta say though, because I've seen him go from that, and then he pulled a complete 180, and he said that he found Jesus and that he loves white people, and I thought it was just for attention. That was one of the first things where it made me think, it's not that he doesn't believe what he's saying, because I can't know that for sure, but that he's saying what he thinks is going to get attention, whether it's positive or negative. And I think that was because, he did an interview with iHypocrite at least once, but I think more than once. And the first time he was on, he was super anti-white guy. He attacked both of the hosts on the stream for being white people, and he basically made, but you could tell by watching that he was making the entire stream about himself. He wanted to be the center of attention. He was the guy that everyone should be paying attention to. He talked over everyone, And then
when he was on Gavin's show, Gavin later revealed that he would not be on a stream unless he was being paid.
Yeah, of course.
And he always does the same thing, always makes it about himself. Watch the first stream he's on with Gavin, because it's hilarious how Gavin is not taking the entire thing seriously at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And they, during the whole thing, they just keep going, Akwave, y'all! They're just mocking him the whole time, and they have to take a break in the middle, and apparently he told them, you guys keep saying this, I'm leaving right now.
Jeez.
Yeah, but the thing that I think is interesting about it is, well, obviously this is, we're dealing with something of a cult around he was sort of a semi-famous internet person. And it kind of reminded me of this really long video that Lauren Southern posted not that long ago called The Whole Truth. And it's 3 hours long, where she's talking about, her experiences with members of the dissident right, or the sort of the new conservative movement, people like Milo Yiannopoulos and Tommy Robinson and so on. And while I was watching it, all of these, the tea that she was spilling didn't really surprise me much, because I'm not the kind of person that essentially idolizes people, even if they are influential. So she had all these things to say. For example, she had all these things to say about Milo, and none of it surprised me, because I figured, he probably brings drama with him wherever he goes. And but then I had to, and this is what you should do when you're dealing with internet personalities. You should stop. Remember that they're just people, and they have tremendous flaws, most likely. And, you just look at the actions that you disagree with, and the actions that you might agree with. So, for example, on the one hand, everything I heard about Milo, there was a lot of stuff that sounded really shady, and he was trying to extort people and things like this. But on the other hand, and again, I don't agree with any of that, but on the other hand, if it weren't for Milo, the Red Pill documentary would not have been made, because he's the one who contributed a large chunk of money to make it happen. Even if his only reason for doing it was to piss off feminists, which it did, I'm okay with that, because Cassie J's movie got made. So I think that it's important that you don't fall into the trap of hero worship of people who appear to be it's a problem that people have of putting people on pedestals that shouldn't be. Obviously, I don't think Gazi is one of those people, but some apparently did, because he did get a cult going, and it ended in tragedy, if it's even over. But I'm reminded of this every day with other people, and I that I see around, and I think that it's just if there's any one thing you can take from it, I think it's something like that. But this outcome, I think, is going to be, this is really unfortunate. Apparently somebody committed suicide. They're having a ton of problems, and I don't think that this is the end of the story of Ghazi Kodzo. Kodzo? Where's Kodzo now? He's in jail, I think.
Something that stands out to me about this, him recruiting aggressively from the local homeless population, that would more likely than not mean the local unsheltered homeless population, because that's who he would have access to. Because I'm sure if he started pulling that shit around a shelter, they would kick him out. But that means that most of the people that this guy exploited were men. And they were not just men, they were men in the most desperate way that their lives could be. They were completely without any resources. Many of them, a lot of times, if you can't get into a homeless shelter, it's because you have a condition that needs treatment that you are not getting treatment for by choice. Because they don't let you in if you're an alcoholic. They don't let you in if you're high, and they don't let you in if you are combative enough that they can't trust that you will refrain from disturbing the peace within the shelter. So if you have a mental health condition that makes you aggressive or otherwise dangerous, and you refuse to get help, which happens a lot, and it's very hard to get somebody into any kind of assistance because of laws actually passed by the left against that kind of thing, like getting somebody into assistance that doesn't want assistance with a mental health condition. Unless they've actually done severe damage to somebody, like they've actually been life threatening to somebody, or they've been deemed a threat to themselves. And it's actually hard to get somebody deemed a threat to themselves or others, even if they have committed crimes against other people. And of course, if you're an alcoholic or a drug addict, you can't be forced into treatment either. It doesn't, I mean, you can by the state if you commit a crime and they make that part of your sentence, but it won't necessarily work if you don't want treatment. So these are people who are in desperate circumstances. They are, in one way or another, their judgment is impaired, and they are mostly men. And here comes this cult leader taking advantage of them. And it looks like I didn't know anything about this guy up until I think I'd heard the phrase Black Hitler a few times. Maybe somebody sent me something that I watched and went, God, that guy's nuts, and moved on.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have any idea how big of a deal this guy was. But there had to have been at least some, authorities, some law enforcement, somebody somewhere looking at this guy going, this guy is actually taking advantage of homeless men, and did nothing. Absolutely nothing. Right? So the idea that having government institutions to deal with stuff like this.
Where did he ultimately get arrested at, Mike? Where did they catch him or arrest him?
Give me 1 second here.
According to the write-up, it says Colorado, I think, is the last.
No. They were back in
Atlanta,
Fayetteville, which is Atlanta suburb.
Atlanta. Okay, all right.
So they're in Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just curious.
And I have a feeling that
about the way that Atlanta or Georgia treats its homeless population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that, any authorities that ignored this guy probably did so because he wasn't taking advantage of women. He was only taking advantage of men. And this is what happens when you treat men like they're disposable.
Yeah, and he was also really gay, so that might have been another reason. Although there are some women that joined him willingly,
yeah.
But I don't think he had to convince them very hard. So
the other thing too, one other thing I didn't include in there, because if I really took my time on this write-up would have been doubled in size.
Yeah,
and because there was a lot of stuff, but it was along with going after youths, going after the homeless. He also claimed that he was adopting people, and one of the things he said was something like, "Oh, I found a kid sleeping at a train station, so I just picked him up and took him back to the house." And it's and that's you could
that's abducting, not adopting.
Yeah, and I'm again tempted to play that off as that's clearly some kind of joke or whatever. But then you look at what happened. Someone calls 911. It's like, I've been kidnapped. I need help.
Yeah.
Yeah, those two things next to each other, man.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. Did this end the way you suspected? Is it over? Let us know, because I think that I don't know, man. It's something about everyone being online or the internet itself. It's either showing us a side to humanity that was always there, but we couldn't see it, or it's bringing something out of us. I think I'm more inclined to believe it's the former. But yeah, this is pretty wild. So, okay.
Well, one thing's for sure, based on the last so many stories we've done here, if you're in school right now and you're in the social sciences or police work or maybe both, look into what you need to learn to go into the field of cult deprogramming, because I have a feeling that the need for people who know how to help people escape the cult mindset is actually going to explode in the next 20 years or so, just from all of the shit that is going on today.
Yeah. Okay, so let us get into the next story. This one comes from Libs of TikTok. Apparently, Libs of TikTok is no longer just a Twitter page. They have a website, and I think they have a YouTube channel. So the woman who runs it, I'm pretty sure it's the same person. She wrote this article entitled "Lesbian Bar Shuts Down 1 Week After Opening Because They Weren't Woke Enough." Doc Marie's is a lesbian bar that opened on July 1st of this year with the hope of bringing more inclusivity to the city of Portland, of course. But just 1 week after their grand opening, Portland has to be an absolute hellscape right now. It's like Kaled from Elden Ring. But just 1 week after their grand opening, they were forced to shut down because of complaints that the bar was not a safe space. Similar to this, well, I'm not going to read that part. Doc Marie's was cannibalized by the woke mob. The crowd on opening day was huge. One woman said that the line for entry on opening night at this place called Doc Marie's was wrapped around the block with literally 200 lesbians waiting to get in. But the excitement about a new progressive hangout dissipated quickly. Within days, Doc Marie found itself on the receiving end of accusations of what? What do you think? Without reading it, what do you think is the problem with the lesbian cafe or whatever it's supposed to be? Why is it not a safe space? Why are they in trouble? Can anyone guess? Anybody?
Gosh. I would have to say that it's either because they did let trans women in and the TERFs were mad, or they didn't let trans women in and the woke feminists were mad. But I'll bet that whatever they did in regard to trans women, somebody was mad.
Yep, that's basically it. So it was not being inclusive enough for trans people and people of color, which I doubt they excluded per se, but they probably just mostly had white lesbians. Despite mask mandates being lifted in Portland, patrons also accused the bar of not implementing enough COVID safety measures, even though they lifted the mandates, right? But the patrons thought it's too dangerous. Patrons also claimed that Doc Marie's had, quote, culturally appropriative art, end quote, on the walls, probably a painting of Frida Kahlo, because it's not a lesbian establishment that's pro-feminist without a fucking painting of Frida Kahlo somewhere. And they probably thought of it as cultural appropriation, right? One TikToker, I'm not going to read that. Employees of Doc Marie's created an Instagram page to echo these concerns. So there's a workers collective. This is why unions are shit, by the way, that came together and they supposedly worked at the cafe, and they voiced their concerns as well on Instagram. They claimed that the owners weren't proactive enough in creating a safe space and accused the owners of racism. The employees also demanded that the bar host free opportunities for education for the community. And here's the I'm going to show you guys the Instagram post. It says, we, the Marie Equi Workers Collective, hereafter MEWC, are composed of the current employees of Doc Marie's. We only speak for ourselves, not of the ownership of the bar, Donk Brands LLC. This is the only social media account affiliated with the MEWC. We felt misled about the space being safe and welcoming. Our vision is a queer worker-owned cooperative that is ran democratically, provides mutual aid, and hosts free opportunities for education to our community. And they go on to say they made some demands. Eventually, the employees demanded the owners relinquish ownership of the bar and hand the business to them. The owners were given a 24-hour deadline to adhere to the ludicrous demands. Yesterday, we presented a list of demands, including owner resignation and relinquishing stake to workers. Commie shit. Which, as of 7 p.m. on 7/4/2022, have not been acknowledged despite being past the agreed-upon 24-hour deadline. Just 5 days after opening, the bar announced on July 6th that they had to close temporarily in order to address the cries from the woke mob for a safe and inclusive space. So,
wow, Brian, this reminds me of the time that I opened a theme bar. And I was gonna be like, hey, what a crazy idea. It's gonna be a theme bar for just poisonous snakes. And I'm gonna employ nothing but poisonous snakes to work there. And I was totally surprised when people started being bitten by poisonous snakes. I could have never seen this coming. Total disaster. Learn from my experience. Just don't do it.
Should look more closely at the at their job applications. Maybe they didn't put it in. I mean, it's possible.
Said venomous, and I didn't know what that meant at the time.
Well, that's not your fault.
It doesn't say poisonous, so we should be fine.
Yeah, it's definitely the system's fault, not yours.
I thought venomous was when you bite it and then you die. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to bite the snake, so I'll be fine.
See, it seems to me that Doc Marie's was wrongly named. Everybody just thought about their shoes. This must be what lesbians call their shoes in order to avoid calling them Doc Martens.
I think that might have been what they were going for. It's like, it's like their logo is a rose. It looks like it's supposed to be a tattoo design. And of course, whenever you see the rose, that's a red flag. But yeah, I think that I don't know.
I don't know. But
I am disappointed.
Yeah, since all they were thinking about was their shoes, they failed to think about all of the different ways in which they could be offended until after it was too late.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, but like, you can't open a business in Portland. Like, it doesn't even matter why you're doing it. They destroy it all every time, and your own employees fucking turn against you. Yes. And they just want you to give them your fucking company. Why don't you wake up, lesbians that own this company? Wake up. Do you want to start a business or not? Because you can't do it in Portland, man. Like, or the left coast in general. Just holy shit. This is I mean, like, I know that you're supposed to like be feeling some degree of schadenfreude because these people get what they deserve because they essentially invite this crap. But I don't want to see people like, lose their business to shit like this. That it's ridiculous. Like, this shouldn't. People need to acknowledge that their private property rights are extremely important. No one has a right to your shit. That starts with your body. So, like, I'm sorry, but there is no alternative answer to that question. There is none. So, because if you think that, oh yeah, I guess if enough people decide they want my shit, then I should give it to them, then you will always be a loser. So just, go live in a trash can now and stop wasting everyone's time. So
pretty much. And the sad thing about this is, it seems like it was easier to start a gay or lesbian bar back in the 1920s when you actually could get arrested under sodomy laws just for having that type of associations. And before before the riot that brought the idea of gay rights to the public and actually got people thinking, hey, maybe we should stop picking on people for having relationships that are different from ours. And now, we've got this mind virus infection of wokeness that has made it impossible even for people who had real fights to fight once upon a time to gather together and just have fellowship and friendship and fun. Like, you can't do those things anymore because you have to be woke. You have to be politically correct. You have to be careful that you're not stepping on anybody's imaginary toes. You can't just not step on the real toes, but you can't step on the imaginary toes of cultural appropriation and not having enough of a percentage of this group of people or that group of people at any given time, and stuff like that. It's such bullshit. It's designed specifically to prevent people from being able to form and maintain communities. You can take over an entire nation if the people in that nation cannot band together to stop you. And the operative part of that is that they can't band together for any reason.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think the mistake that Doc Marie's made to begin with was the very first mistake I think they made was thinking that they could just open a lesbian-only establishment. Like, I mean, that was the mistake, because remember what I said, and I know that we all have said this too, on some level, when I said that lesbians, bisexuals, and gays are going to be the next ones targeted by the remainder of the queer population, of the queers and the non-binaries and the trans people that are, not fully, like the transgender types. This is what I'm talking about. Like, they came at them and said, this isn't inclusive enough because some lesbians are men, and some women can be trans and also be lesbians. But I think that essentially they believe, and I don't even know if they wouldn't allow trans people in there. They were just being accused of transphobia. So for all I know, Doc Marie's would have been, maybe they would have been fine with it. I mean, like, if you're going to operate what I can only assume is a gay community, because that's where you're building your business and that's where you're setting it up, then you're expecting that sometimes you're going to get a trans man or a trans woman and they're going to want to go in there. And unless they're going to, like, legitimately, like, and consciously exclude them, which I doubt, because I don't think anyone wants to draw that kind of attention to themselves, they probably would have been fine with it. But I think that what got them in trouble was in the language of how they were describing their business to begin with. And if they would have just said, we're starting a business, and maybe the only thing that the owners would have, said that had anything to do with sexual orientation is that we're a lesbian couple and we're starting a business, I don't think anything would have happened if they'd have done that. But because they made the business itself, right? One of the things it was sold on is the idea that it's for lesbians. Well, that was it. That was a done deal. You're bigoted against all these other people, and for some reason we've decided that lesbians are white too. So it's also racist. And what's that? What's that painting of fucking what's her name? Frida Kahlo. What's that Frida Kahlo doing on the wall? What's that Frida Kahlo mural about? That's racist too. And so now you basically, like, created the conditions for your own destruction. And then your own employees, they suddenly start rising up, and then they demand your business belong to them. You like, when you apologize or try to accommodate or operate within the identity politics sphere for something, you're asking for trouble. Not even like gigantic mega corporations like Disney can, like, do that without losing some money. They're just more comfortable with losing it because they think that the cause is more important than profits. But if you can't afford to do that, if you're basically, like, taking on a risky investment, don't fuck with that, because it doesn't exist to help you. It only exists to destroy. That's the purpose of it. So this is just progressivism, wokeism, leftism, whatever, doing what it's supposed to do. It crushed your business in a week because you thought that you could take that power and use it for good. And it just doesn't work. So
this is, by the way, this is how you know that the alphabet people have gotten everything they've wanted. You look at this bar, and something like this, like as little as 50 years ago would have been, oh great, we finally have a place, we can be ourselves, we can we can share our experiences, we can find romantic partners, and we can sort of a getaway from everything. You know, because we don't technically have the rights yet or whatever. But now they go and it's like, yeah, well, we have this thing, but it's not good enough.
Yep.
We have to, you know, have them apologize for being on indigenous land. We have to, you know, what about the people of color? What about the trans people? What about the discrimination they're facing? Well, is this place discriminated?
What about
the
disabled?
But are we going to just sit around and wait for them to?
Yeah. What about the neurodivergent? What about people on medication? What about the fat people? Yeah.
They've gotten everything they wanted, and it's still not enough.
I think that maybe what happened was the lesbians that operated this business, they announced it. They were like, oh, we're going to do a lesbian cafe. And there were a bunch of women and non-binary folks, and they were like, oh, that looks interesting. And then they went there once, and they were like, you know what? I'm still really depressed and suicidal. I think it's the fault of this business. Like they were probably already a fucking mess in the brain before, and then they heard about this, and they're like, oh my God, you know, we're getting closer to equality. I'm going to go check it out. And then they do, and because the problems in their lives have nothing to do with their identity, and it's just them needing to like work on some shit personally, they find that they're still sad and depressed and on medication. They're like, wow, my life is still the same shitty life. It must be the fault of this business. Let's tear it down. And I mean, like, that's entirely plausible. I know that there is a extremely disproportionate number of millennials and Zoomers that are on, like, you know, all kinds of behavioral drugs that...
No, it's worse than that. It is worse than that. Did you know they are now advertising the equivalent of Prozac for your fucking cat to make your cat not pee on the curtains and scratch the furniture?
I mean,
like,
I believe it. I think I've read about that before, actually.
I kind of feel like I was on the some of the front end of this because they drugged me with this shit when I was in high school. And they did it because I was on steroids. And it didn't occur to anybody that if you put a teenager who's in the middle of the whole fun thing of puberty on 6 different steroids, you might get some emotional side effects. And you might want to consider maybe not so many steroids. And there were some medicines I took that I had to. There was no way I was going to survive without some of those medicines, but they might have been able to treat some of the stuff that I was experiencing without putting me on 6 different steroids.
Yeah.
And when they discovered that I was having, massive anger management problems, and I was going through like bouts of depression that left me wanting to walk out in front of a truck, and the only reason I didn't do it was because it might traumatize the trucker. That was when they put me on Prozac. And when Prozac didn't work, then they added lithium. And then when that made me sick, they added, the purple pill. And when that caused problems, they added another pill. By the time I was in my 20s, until my insurance ran out and I suddenly didn't need any pills anymore, I think they had me, I was taking like 12 or 14 pills a day and using inhalers and all that stuff. That's what is happening to every kid in America whose parents do not take a second look, give the hairy eyeball to the doctor and go, we want a second opinion before we put our child on another drug. And in the 80s, it was, you were sort of respected doctors, and you had this idea of, you expected them to be vigilant and to be diligent, do their due diligence. And you still had to get second opinions for things like surgery and stuff like that. But not anymore. Today, like, every doctor out there is giving drugs away or prescribing drugs. Like, they all have samples in their doctor's offices of things like Ritalin and Prozac and stuff like that, that all you have to do is have a bad day, and they're going to put you on an SSRI drug. And it's insane. It's totally destroying the ability of people to just deal with shit. You can't deal with shit. You have to have a drug for it now. And so if you go to your local grocery store and you're used to buying, I don't know, a particular brand of milk, and they've discontinued your brand of milk, and now if you want to get that brand of milk, you got to go across town. But you can still get milk. It's just not that brand, right? All of a sudden, it's not a disappointment that you can deal with by choosing to either forgo that brand or drive a mile to get your milk. No, it's a crisis.
Yeah.
It's an absolute crisis.
Absolutely. And medicate. I think that medication should be a last. It should be a last resort. But I think it becomes the first thing we do.
It should be something that is only done if the problem is genuinely chemical. Not all depression is chemical. Not all crises are solvable by changing your brain chemistry. And in fact, what ended up happening with me was, Prozac didn't make me not suicidal. Morals kept me from committing suicide. I had a moral objection to what the people around me would go through if I did anything to myself, and I lost all of the anxiety that I had in relation to what the consequences would be. This might hurt really bad. Well, it's only going to hurt until I die, right? And then it'll be done and over with, and I'll never feel anything again. I can still remember thinking that way. And the only thing that stopped me was this would be a horrible thing to do to the people who love me, right? So if somebody is feeling completely unloved and they take Prozac, what happens to them? Somebody, and the same thing with all of these other drugs, right? And again, if you're in a situation where you can't deal with minor things like a different brand of milk, or the person that you used to like to hang out with at this location doesn't work there anymore, or doesn't come there anymore as a patron or whatever. You can't deal with stuff like that. You can't deal with anything, and everything becomes a crisis, and everything becomes a reason to be politically active. And the next thing you know, you are attacking business after business and joining groups like Antifa. And that's where we are today.
Yep.
Didn't they also come out with something recently and saying that SSRIs just don't work? The mechanism they thought that was doing something for the whole time, the serotonin balance, actually has nothing to do with mental health.
It doesn't fix depression.
I learned about that today or the other day. I think it was a couple days ago.
I saw just rapid fire, like a dozen articles all saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that Tom Cruise interview where he was this was like when War of the Worlds was coming out. So
the jumping on the couch interview?
No, not the one. It was
Matt Lauer.
It was with Matt Lauer. Yeah, and he was trying to talk about the problems with these, Ritalin and Adderall and these other drugs that are supposed to alter behavior, and he was speaking out against it. And even I fell for this at the time. I just, the media told me Tom Cruise is crazy. Don't listen to him. And everyone,
he is crazy.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean he couldn't be right about something.
No. He couldn't
yeah, you could be crazy and still be right.
He could be right. The thing, though, is I really want to say, because I've seen a lot of people sharing, oh my God, he was so right. Well, he was only right in the fact that he was doing this because Scientology is against all forms of psychiatry, including medication. They believe psychiatrists are evil.
I'm sure that they do. And actually, that's not even a sentiment that a lot of people have towards the mental health field. That's not even limited to Scientology. There's plenty of people who are very suspicious of mental health professionals, and because again the pharmaceutical aspect of it, and so I think that there is a lot of cause to be suspicious, and I think that to simply throw out, and I'm not saying that anybody here is doing this, but I think to simply say, well, Tom Cruise is crazy, therefore nothing he says could possibly have any validity whatsoever, I think that is a big mistake, because I think that he is mostly right on there, even if the cause for his statements on that comes from some belief regarding his, I don't know, Scientology, I don't know his philosophy or his religion or whatever. But that doesn't make him wrong. And so I think that what needs to be talked about is basically we need to open our minds to hear from more people, because we miss that, because everyone was like, he's Scientology's crazy. But what he said carries some validity, because I remember many years later when I started doing this show, we had Sage Gerard on as a guest, and I think there was some other people too, and we were talking about, SSRIs, is that what you call them? And other
selective
psychological
serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Yeah, and other psychotic or psychiatric drugs, and the stuff that Sage was on essentially made him into, like, in his words, like he said this, right? It made him numb. So he didn't, it was supposed to help him, but it just numbed him. And he hated it. And like, I called, I don't know if you guys remember Sage, but I called him maybe a year ago.
We had a long conversation about that at his house.
Yeah.
I went down to the thing he was doing, last thing he was doing at Kennesaw University. Yeah,
and I spoke to him on the phone about a year ago, and I think that he doesn't take medication anymore. He's absolutely, like, living a great life. He's married, he's got a really good job. It's almost like, I mean, he didn't explicitly say this, but it's almost like he figured out a way to get things in his life right enough that he wouldn't need to depend on medication. And then he made his life right. And from what I know, assuming that he's telling the truth, which I have no reason not to think that, he made it work, right? So, again, there is what I'm saying, because I know that people in the chat are going to talk about, like, why these medications are necessary. And I'm not throwing that out, but what I am saying is that maybe we are too quick to go to that as a solution, in the same way that... Sure. Yeah, in the same way that people insist on just getting a shot or taking a pill to solve any problem. I have a cold, I'm going to do this. And sometimes you just have to, like, figure it out or endure it.
I can explain a little bit like about why it's such a big deal that this stuff is overprescribed. If you think of the brain like you would think of a computer, because the brain kind of works like a wet computer in some ways, right? And it has a system of sensors that are either on or off, and if they're on, then the message goes through, right? And it performs a function. And your brain chemicals, serotonin in particular, are being controlled by these drugs in a way that is unnatural to the computer. You have you have one part of your brain that puts out this chemical. I'm going to try to simplify this without using a bunch of jargon. But your brain puts the chemical out, right? And you have a sensor that says, "Oh, hey, that chemical is there. Send message." And then you have another function that comes along and cleans it up. And the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, that slows down that cleanup process so that the chemical sits there for a longer time, under the assumption that the part that looks and says, "Oh, hey, there's serotonin," sends out your order and does the thing, doesn't see it fast enough, or the cleanup is happening too fast, and your brain isn't getting the effects from the serotonin. So if it's prescribed to somebody whose brain is working just fine, and maybe they're just depressed because grandpa died, or they just lost their job, or something else big happened in their life that causes a normal grief process, they're not dealing with the serotonin being picked up before the sensor can sense it. So now they have this serotonin present, and the sensor is like, "Oh, look, hey, serotonin," sends message. And then it sees it again. "Hey, look, there's serotonin," sends message again. It messes you up, right? And that's a problem because now your brain is sending inappropriate signals. So imagine if you had a program that was supposed to send a command. You do a thing, it creates a command, the computer follows the command, and then it's supposed to move on to the next thing, but something gets stuck, and instead of the command being sent once, it's sent 3 or 4 times before the computer can move on to the next thing. The program is going to have bugs, right? So when you take Prozac or any other serotonin reuptake inhibitor, any other selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, if you don't have the problem that it's prescribed to fix, it creates that problem of your brain sending these inappropriate signals, and it makes it difficult for you to experience the anxiety that you should be experiencing when something's wrong. Your alarm systems don't go off the way they should go off because they're being inhibited by this extra detection of serotonin, and it screws up all kinds of things. So you become numb, you feel numb, you don't think about things you should be thinking about, you don't notice or pay attention to things you should be noticing or paying attention to. You become like less engaging with the people around you. There's just a whole bunch of shit that goes wrong. And that's happening across the country right now with a shitload of people, because it's a lot easier to just hand somebody some pills and say, this will fix your problem, than it is to go through like a 27 therapy session program to get them to figure out how to take control of their own lives.
Exactly. Anyway, I don't know how we got on that tangent, but let us know what you guys think about that in the comments. We are about to wrap this up. I do have another Rumble. I have a Rumble rant that I missed after we were covering Gazi. So Zeranx gives us $5, and this is in reference to Gazi. He says, so the Fifth Element remake is canceled or on hiatus? I'm telling you, he should have gone into acting. Like, he could easily have been like a replacement for I forget, what was the character's name in Fifth Element that we're referencing? Chris Tucker's character, you remember?
Ruby Rhodes.
Ruby Rhodes, yes, I believe that's right. But yeah, if you guys have never seen any Gazi videos and watch them, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. The guy is literally the character from Fifth Element. All right, but anyway.
Except the difference is Chris Tucker was just playing that character.
Yeah.
Gazi's a crazy person.
Yeah, he's living it. He is living it. Rudy Rod. That's what Assassin of the Gray said. I think that's right. Yeah, Rudy Rod.
It's been forever. I just know it's RR and it's something that's with Ruby or Rhodey or something like that.
Yeah, Ruby Rod.
I will Google this now.
Yeah, go ahead. All right, so we are going to now close the show out.
Ruby Road Rod RHOD.
Oh, so yeah, that could be Rod. I think it is Ruby Rod. All right, so so we're gonna go into the patron-only show now, and we're gonna check out this article. It's kind of short, but maybe we'll talk about it at length, or I could get something else. Medford-based company Wicked Saint Studios is preparing to launch the world's first adventure activism game. I'm sure it's going to be a blast, and hopefully the kids at the Antifa camp will get to try out the beta when it launches, because that's kind of like what this article is about the launch of the beta of this adventure activism game. So if you guys
we had another Super Chow.
I only got the one.
I see a few in there.
Oh, Super Chows? Yeah. Hold on. I may have missed that. Yeah, I did. Okay, sorry about that. So let's read the Super Chows. The 3Ks in Pritmaster gives us $10 and says, funny how those wannabe rebels always feel like they are fighting the system in the most woke shitholes ever. If Antifa would at least have the balls to go into the most backwards hillbilly KKK country to fight racism, then I could at least take their motive seriously. But they only feel bold enough to throw in to throw in some windows of the Starbucks stores in Soytown. Well, the other thing too is that they probably won't be able to find any KKK hillbilly country
the
communities.
funny thing is they recently tried to start beefing with a motorcycle MC
What's a
at
motorcycle?
a biker
MC?
bar.
Oh. At a biker bar. Yeah, well, there is also an assumption that bikers are also basically racists.
And there was some great footage from that Andy No posted on his account. Yeah,
probably didn't go over very well.
You don't fuck with a bunch of 1%er bikers. It's not a good idea.
Yeah,
very bad for your health.
Exactly. That is hilarious.
So they've never heard of gay bikers, huh?
They probably know about them, but that's probably a separate gang. The Rosebuds. Okay, so the thank you for that, and then the Revolutionary Printmaster gives us $5 and says, well, if you want to benefit from the fruits of your revolution, then you better be prepared to fight your old comrades. It's totally delusional to think that you can keep being friends with those envious assholes once you have changed the system enough to be able to earn a living. Well, see, that's the thing too. If you build your own business, even if you're doing it for woke reasons, you're actually participating and reproducing the systems of oppression by opening a business. So that makes you the enemy as well. They didn't bring that up, but that's basically the nature of this kind of like Marxist approach to organizing reality. So no one can start a business because starting a business is using the system of private property rights, which is regulating or normalizing the oppressive system. So that system has to go down. So yeah, I'm sorry, but you chose to live there, and now you can't have anything because no one can have anything in this system, in their system. It's totally delusional to think that you can keep being friends with these envious assholes once you've changed the system enough to be able to earn a living. They will just see you as a prime target because nobody is allowed to leave the crab bucket.
Even,
all right, thank you.
Even not in that context, you're going to be fighting yourselves if you gain power in a system like this, because the first thing you do after the revolution, in a communist revolution, you execute the revolutionaries, because we can't have a counter revolution, now can we?
Yeah, because they've been conditioned to be revolutionaries, and we can't have them creating another revolution. So they got to go.
Yeah, you'll have the revolution and everything will be great, and then they'll say like, well, what about the trans inclusion here? Where are the people of color? Oh, we're going to have to shut this revolution down.
Well, it's like, you see, there's actually a few memes, but I remember one where, there's like soldiers, like straight up like Soviet soldiers, and they're lining people up against the wall to kill them. And one of them is like some, overweight trans woman with pink hair, and they're all filthy, and they're turning back and they're saying, excuse me, but I was aware that, I was under the impression that I was going to be like a Twitch streamer for the cause. And the soldier's like, face the wall. Yeah, because that's like how it's really going to turn out. So, all right. And then lastly, the medicated Prit gives us $5 and says, I got to say, alcohol was my lifesaver for a few years. Addictions and medication is a lifesaver for people who cannot find a way to deal with their mental problems in a constructive way. I think it's probably worth exploring other options, but I am still on some light antidepressants and Ritalin, but I gradually work myself towards trying to work better without them. That's what I would see as the biggest problem regarding psychological problems in society. You can use medication to ease the problems in the moment, and sometimes your brain really needs it, but you can also fix a lot of the problems if you manage to fix the circumstances of your life.
That's just it. There's a big difference between circumstances and chemical imbalance, and all too often they're treating circumstances like they're irrelevant, and all they're trying to fix is a chemical imbalance, whether there's one there or not.
Yeah, and I think this is why I tend to find psychology more useful than psychiatry. Psychiatry is basically the medications, right?
Yeah, psychiatry is is the medical doctor that can prescribe medications. Psychology is the medical doctor that studies your. I think it's still a medical doctor, but they study the brain and they talk you through, basically dealing with your issues.
Right.
And so
It's
if
more,
you were to
Peterson is a psychologist.
right,
So
and this is the other thing. There you can be called a therapist without having a degree in psychology. You have to be careful who you go to for therapy. You want to look for somebody who actually has studied the brain. And I mean, it's one thing if you've talked to somebody and their work works for you, and then you find out, hey, they actually are a therapist, and you can go to them for therapy. It's another thing if you're just randomly looking for a therapist and you happen upon somebody that's got no credentials. And normally I don't advocate for credentials, but medicine is an area that you really do need somebody that has been certified to know what they're doing and doesn't just tell you they know what they're doing. Because if they screw up your brain or your body, you can't necessarily fix it by going to somebody else. And that's basically, so if you go to somebody for therapy, you look for somebody that's trying to help you figure out how to take control over your life. Not somebody who just wants to hear you talk and keeps asking how that makes you feel, right?
yeah.
And if they're not, if they identify areas in your life that you simply can't control, they should be helping you to process that and move on so that you are controlling the parts of your life that you can control and not just milking you for $150 every session to talk about your problems and come away with no new things to work on, no new answers, basically.
Yeah. All right. So thank you for the super chows. I also have some news that I just learned about, so I'm not going to say this is breaking, but I just learned it. David Warner has passed away. If you guys don't know who that is, let me just see. I know the name. Actor. He's the guy who I know him from Tron. He played the main villain in the original Tron film. He was an English guy, and he worked in. He was in Titanic. Played Hamlet. I mean, I think everyone in England that does acting's probably been in a bunch of Shakespeare stuff. But he was in The Omen, A Christmas Carol, Mary Poppins Returns. He's played characters on Star Trek. Anyway, he recently passed away, as well as, and this one I know even more, Paul Sorvino. So Paul Sorvino, I know him from Goodfellas, and he was also in The Rocketeer. Played a mob boss. He often plays mafia guys, heavies.
Well, it's a bad year to be someone who's associated with the Italian mafia in the movies.
Yeah, it's a shame. So, I just thought I would make mention that these two guys have passed away. So, if you guys are familiar with either Warner, David Warner
was Morpheus in the first Fallout game.
Oh yeah. These guys, a lot of these older guys, especially, did a lot
he was
of,
in
voice
he was in the
work.
Baldur's Gate games.
Yep.
I know him as the guy from Tron. I can't remember the character's name, but I know him from Tron, the first one. He was the main villain, and also like I said before, I think he was on some Star Trek. He's done some work with them, and Paul Sorvino as the guy from Goodfellas that ran the mafia from prison, I believe. So good stuff. Yes, Sark. Thank you, Assassin of the Grey. He played Sark. I couldn't remember the character's name. That was the one I was thinking of. So both of them passed away. R.I.P. F's in the chat for those guys. So.
Oh God, his last television credit is Teen Titans Go. How horrible.
Oh no, who was he? Who did he voice?
The Lobe.
I don't know what that is.
Me neither.
sounds like a tick character. All right, so
Yeah.
we're gonna wrap it up here, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the patron chat or in the YouTube chat for the patron show. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about any and or all of the stories we discussed today. And lastly, please consider sharing this video because sharing is caring. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.